All right. Hello, Fortina's brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is November 3rd, 2021. And I keep forgetting, yes, today is my birthday for those of you who remembered. And I was blessed. Our family was blessed with a bit of an early gift yesterday. My wife was released from the hospital and she's back home. So thank you all for all of your prayers. She's home and she's doing well. She's been eating fine for a while now. So we got all sorts of things that she wanted. Good stuff. You know, she's always eating quite well and healthy in that sense. And so she's I don't know, she's probably in there eating right now when I left. so so she's doing well. And we had what had happened, you know, a lot of people, it was COVID that put it over the top, but for many who don't know, excuse me, that's just my usual throat thing. For many of you who don't know, our whole family had COVID here early October, and my wife ended up having the worst breathing issue when it was over, or right towards the end after a couple weeks, and the rest of us were perfectly fine. Everything was over, so we ended up taking to her hospital, and really quick, she was there. They said, okay, she was now past COVID. You know, they didn't have to come in and wear all the equipment and everything to come and see her. And but they were having issues. They couldn't understand why her lungs were having such issues from COVID because she had too much scarring. They did MRIs on her. They did all sorts of things. She was there for 10 days, even like, and it was more than a week after having had COVID even finished. And the doctors were trying to figure out what was going on. And it turned out it goes all the way back to when she was little, and, you know, things that were going on, and family smoking and all sorts of things when she was little. And that's why there were all these old scars. And so what had happened was COVID just kind of put it over the top, so that when she got there, they were able to now find ways to heal her and all these things throughout her life. So it ended up being kind of you could say like a double-edged sword, if you will. It sucked to have, but she felt it was a blessing at the same time, because now all these things started to make sense. You know, why she ate slower than the rest of us, why she would prop up her pillows all the time to sleep, why her sleep was broken, all these different things that through decades, you know, she's 50, and so she doesn't care if you know. Just so you know, she's good. She's like, as long as I look younger. So um she was happy now after all this to understand why these things had happened. And she had a really great doctor who was just saying, we are going to figure this out, and you're not going anywhere until we figure this out. And so they figured it out. They understood now what it was. And she had never actually, since she was little, actually had full breaths, but was never aware that she didn't. And so they put her up on oxygen, and then she's got this puffer now that she has to use a few times a day. And when they brought her home, they said it won't be forever, but it will be most likely for several months. So we have this oxygen system put in our house, and she has this puffer. So she makes her way around the house, and there's this tube that goes. It's a very long tube, and it goes upstairs, main floor, and then downstairs. Obviously, bedroom upstairs, main floor living, and then in the basement is where she works, which she won't be working yet, but when she does start working again, and you know, she does her crafts and stuff down there. So it's great that it reaches the whole house. Anyways, so that was the good news. And you know, knowing that we have a great relationship and we're always playing around, it's funny because Sean, our brother Stainless C, in the forum, those of you who don't know the forum when I say it, you can come and join us. There's like 850 plus people in there. You can come to the website ministryrevealed.com, and you can join the forum and join the conversations that are going on. All sorts, scripture, prayers, news, all sorts of things. All right, what people are seeing in relation to the time we're in, all sorts of stuff going on in there. And you could just watch or you can participate, but you're free to come and join us there. There's no charge. And one of our brothers, Stainless C. Sean, put in a funny comment when I said yesterday she had come home. And the comment was, oh, the old accordion still has a few more pumps in it. And, you know, he made a funny comment. And I responded to let him know that when the two people that came yesterday, my wife was on the on a tank while they were setting up the house, and as they're setting it up and they're saying, okay, there's this, and we'll give you we'll set up another portable, so you'll have two portables, you know, if she has to go out somewhere. And I said, oh, thank goodness for those portable ones. I said, she still has to go out and walk the dog every day. And you just look to see their reaction, right? The reaction, but because they knew we were fun, because we were already being a little playful, you know, they just chuckled. And you know, some people's reaction, my daughter gets she gets a kick out of it, but she doesn't, because she finds it embarrassing sometimes. But typical dad joke stuff to mom. And yeah, so she can have a portable tank while she walks the dog down the street. So it was fun. We're happy she's back, and kind of like a little birthday present, right? Or a big birthday present, because now all the family's back home. So with that, I thank you guys for all your prayers. It was quite a month, October, and we are happy it's over. I know there are many other brothers and sisters throughout this ministry, and family and friends of them, that are going through some similar situations and other difficult situations. And our prayers are still always with you. We're not ending this. And you know, like I said with my wife, you know, we may have this set up for a few months, but by the end of this month, you won't have to worry about breathing this air on the earth anymore. And that's what we've been watching for. That's what we've been praying for. That's what we've been seeking and revealing and understanding for the past, I think, couple months now, month and a half. And that is the story of Hanukkah, which we're going to talk about. And I'm not sure what today's video is going to be called. And sorry, that's not all we're going to talk about, but I'm going to add more details to those things we have spoken about in teachings now for a while in relation to the timing of Hanukkah. But there was always a question, well, what about this? Well, how is that possible with this? You know, people have had questions, and even there's one piece in Luke, and you know, I was wondering, why would it be 7 lights and not 8 or 9 lights and so forth? Well, I decided to do some searching about 3 or 4 days ago from our brother Jimmy, who does our Facebook, and he says, oh, that's great that all the lights were there in Luke 7, that it was after that, but why would it be 7 lights? Why wouldn't it be more? And I had that question within myself too, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go look for it. And I didn't find it right away. I was doing some looking, and then, as you guys know, my famous place is in the shower. I take very long showers, and just that's my final kind of, not final, but my late night time with the Lord, and just having conversations and talking with him. And all of a sudden I get, wait a second, why would they have, after Antioch of Epiphanes, and after that destruction and the time of the Maccabees, they wouldn't have built an 8-candle menorah. It would have still been the 7-candle menorah. And I thought, wait a second, let me go look it up. So you'll see what I'm going to get into. We'll touch a little bit on that. We're going to start off by little parts and pieces, or not right away, but as we get going, we'll go into some of the parts and pieces, and then we're going to touch on some areas most likely you've never heard me talk about before in Ezekiel, because a brother, one of the brothers in the forum, shared a video with me. And as I said, I don't watch too many full videos of others, but this was somebody that I have recently seen some of his things. And so I was just looking to see what would really stand out. So I watch it on faster speed, of course, and listen on faster speed. And something in Ezekiel really stood out. And I believe it helps, not, well, I don't believe, I know it helps confirm more things. It proves the timing. And I think it even brings more proof to the rest of the timing that's a little earlier in the book of Ezekiel, like chapter 21 in relation to 2021. All right, so we'll get into that as well. And let's see, like I usually do, for those that are new to the ministry, as we get this going, you're going to hear things that are going to rock your world if you're new to this ministry, because you're going to hear something, me saying maybe the opened books, or you're going to hear the 14 years of tribulation, and you're going to think this guy is mad and has lost his mind. I promise you, I'm not mad, and I have not lost my mind. The books have been opening here in this ministry for over 4 years, and If you come to this playlist right here, this is what will pop up. Here's the playlist. For those that don't know, I added the Discourses Revealed one here. But for anybody that's new, these first two videos and then the third, but these first two intro videos are the keys to unlocking and understanding scripture, in particular for this time which we call is to come. Was is before Christ, is Christ until now that we're in, and the is to come begins at the escape of the bride. And I believe, many of us believe, the scriptures have now been revealed and we can see and understand. I can't go into all of it. There is just way too much to connect it and show it all with all the videos we've done on it. But that it will connect to the 28th of November and the Lord will be here as the Son of Man for 40 days. There's a video on it right here. I know the first thing you're saying is 40 days, the Son of Man. He's not coming here. He doesn't come till feet down on the Mount of Olives. Well, that's because you've all been taught from the Gospel of Matthew. The Gospel of Matthew has been your foundation to look at all things end times. And the reason you did it is because you haven't yet understood this first intro video, which is who the Gospels are speaking to. All these things, or most of these things, you can also download in our book called The End Times Revealed Like Never Before, The Opening of End Time Scriptures Revealed. You can buy it on Amazon. You can download it for free from a link under this video, or you can download it for free from Ministry Revealed. I think it's good to have the free downloaded. You can start reading right away, but also the paperback so that you've got a physical copy. You can take it, you can share it with people and so forth. All right. But either case, you read the first two chapters and you will begin to understand these first two keys. Who the Gospels are speaking to has now been revealed. We know that we've been taught from Matthew as a foundation all of our lives, not just in end times, but what's been revealed to this ministry is the opening of the books for the end times. But in that end times opening of books, it also helped bring more clarity to things that we've been taught in the now of Scripture. And it brought clarity to things that were in the Old Testament as well. But the focus in what we share mainly is this is to come. And when your foundation of all of it has been from Matthew, you've missed Mark's portion of the story and you've missed Luke's portion of the story. John's is a separate one that kind of combines or goes through them as workers. But the synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the end of days are Luke, Mark, and Matthew. And if you go watch in this intro video, after you watch a series, if you go and watch after watching the first and second one, to understand that Luke's portion is the escape and then a 50-day portion. Then Mark's is the 7 years of seals. And Matthew's is 7 years of trumpets. So when you get to the second video, you realize, oh my goodness, there were three groups of people. There was the bride, the sleeping church, and the Jews, the blind. And you say, wait a second. And you start realizing what these differences within the Gospels now mean, and it will blow you away. And so when you get to the Discourses video, you'll see that Luke's is only a 50-day portion of time. That Mark's is the 7 years of seals. That Matthew's is the 7 years of trumpets. And you're going to be able to see it and understand why the wordings are slightly different. And when you do, I promise you, it will change everything. It will open Scripture up to you like it's never been seen before. Okay? This will begin with this first video or the first chapter of the book. And the second one is what becomes revealed after you understand the first. So because we've all been taught from Matthew, we think there's only 7 years. We think the whole church, people, I don't say we, I mean the people out there that don't know what's been revealed here, they think it's 7 years, which means only Matthew's time is left and everybody is raptured before that time, as if you're at the end of Mark. Well, that would be true if only Matthew's time was left and you were at the end of Mark. That would be the rapture of the great multitude, 144,000 sealed, and boom, Matthew, the Jews, 7 years of trumpets. The problem is, because we haven't understand who these books were speaking to, they've not understood that Mark was speaking to a group of people, and his group of people were the sleeping church. You see, that is the 7 years of seals. God's harvest model is never take everything all at once. God's harvest model is pre, mid, and post. God's harvest model is 10% to the Lord. Then the main field, and whatever drops in that main field, you leave it, and you leave the corners. So it's called corners and gleaning. So first fruits, the 10% to the Lord. Then the main harvest, which leaves 90%, but you can't take the corners and the gleanings. So maybe out of that 90, maybe it's like, I don't know, 85%. That is the great multitude. Okay, that is the rapture of the church. And then you have Judah. You can call it in a big picture, the corners and gleaning. Those are the three groups: Luke, Mark, and Matthew, the synoptic gospels. All right, this is why, for example, I'm just going to get going. See, I'm just going to let the Spirit go as we go, but we will get into all those other things as well. You see, this is why we read things in Luke's discourse that we don't read in Mark or Matthew's. I'm not going to go into all of it, because if you go to that 12th video in the intro series, it's gonna blow you away when you see and understand now who they're speaking to. And now when you see how these discourses are revealed, it will truly blow you away. Okay, but listen to what it says. Watch ye therefore, see, watch and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So what does it tell you got to do? Well, you got to watch. You have to be watching. You have to be observing. You have to be seeking the Lord. You have to be diligent in Him. This is the bride. You see, this is the 10% going to the Lord. This is the pre-trib rapture group. It's called like a rapture in 2 Corinthians 12:2, according to Paul. The first group is called like a rapture, and they go to the third heaven. The second group is called was raptured, because it is the rapture, and they're going to go to paradise. Then at the end of trumpets, he returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. You see, 2 takings and then a return. Okay, and what happens is you understand that this pre-trib group is one, watching for the Lord. And if we plan on being like Enoch, because Enoch was translated never having tasted death, right? That he should not see death, because God translated. Why? Because he pleased God. He had faith. Okay, we all, of course, have to have faith first. And then what? For he that cometh to God must first believe that he is God, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So diligently seeking him, having faith, watching, you see? So if they're just churchgoers and you're not really watching, and you're still just, let me live my life, and yeah, I believe in Jesus, guess what? That's called rapture group mentality. It doesn't mean you're going to be left and you're never going to go be with the Lord. It just means you're not that diligently seeking him group to be accounted like Enoch was. Right? Like we said, the difference between a sleeping church and the bride is, you understand as the bride, as this example, that he's written you all of these letters through other people, but it's the Spirit that was in them. That's, of course, what we know, the written words of the Bible. So he's given you all of these words, all of these letters, and he had to go away. Right? Think of an engagement, and you are going to marry this person, and you write all these letters to them, but you don't know if you're coming back. In this case, we know he's coming back, so you don't know when you're coming back, but you write letters, and they read the letters. Right? Your to-be bride is reading the letters, praying for your safety, praying for you to come home, eagerly expecting you to come home, but is always reading your letters, spending some time rereading them because of her love for you. That's what the bride is like. That's the diligently seeking. That's the watching. See? That's the difference between the bride, the sleeping church who just goes about their day and believes in Jesus, but that's pretty much it. There is a difference, brothers and sisters. There is a difference. Okay? And it goes back, that was a question in the forum today. It goes back to that harvest model. If people would understand the harvest model, man, first fruits, main harvest, corners and gleaning, that is the picture of the end of days. Pre, mid, and return. You'll see that in this intro series as well. You're going to find out that pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib, they're all true. That's what 2 Corinthians chapter 12 is talking about. Above 14 years ago, oh, there it is. Above 14 years ago, one that goes to the third heaven, the next one that'll go to paradise, and then he says, and now, at the end of it, he says, now this is the third time and I'm ready to come to you. Man, I promise you, these intro videos they'll blow your mind. And you can read most of them and more in the book as well, whether you download or whether you buy, whatever you want to do. All right? I'm telling you, it's so exciting, guys. We are in a time right now that, I understand it's getting more difficult. I understand some people are just like, ugh, how much longer, Lord? All right? It's kind of like this that we can see happening right now. Let me show you this. One of our brothers was asking me about this, where it was that I was talking about it. And it wasn't here. I'll show you another piece in a second as well. But it's like, let's have a read at this. In John 6, verse 51, it says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of this world. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? You see, I want you guys to remember when it says the world. Remember that? We've been teaching that lately. The world means everybody except the Jews. That's what it means. It means the world, because the house of Israel is all blended with them. It's the world, the Gentiles, house of Israel, but the Jews are separate. Okay? They're his chosen people. Okay? They're the Father's chosen people. Then it says, then Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, except you eat the flesh of the Son of Man. I mean, this is difficult to think, right? And drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoso eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me, and I in him. You're like, has he lost his mind? Could you? Now, I want you to remember, this is a whole group of disciples and these 12 to be apostles that are there with them. What do you think is going through their head? I thought this guy was the Christ. I thought, isn't he the Messiah? What is he talking about? We got to eat his flesh? We got to drink his blood? What the heck is going on? Verse 57. And as the living Father hath sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. Come down to verse 60. Many thereof of his disciples, when they heard this, said, this is a hard saying. How can we hear it? You see, they didn't just walk away. They were like, man, this is hard. How do we understand what he's getting at here? And Jesus goes on to say, when Jesus knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, does this offend you? And if, what and if you shall see the Son of Man ascend up where he was before? Now, this is an important part right here. You ready for this? Right here. Wait. No, it's coming. So he says, but there are some of you that believe not. Okay, no, here it is right here. 63. It is the Spirit. This is it right here. It is the Spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profits nothing. All right? It is the Spirit that quickens. The flesh means nothing. Now listen to this. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. You see what ends up happening? They start walking away. But there are some of you that believe not. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were that believed not and who should betray him. And he said, therefore said I unto you, that no man can come to me except it were given unto him of my Father. From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. There they were, walking with him, believing in him, who he was, or believing who they thought he was. But some that were there, even as disciples, he knew weren't his. What? They left. They walked away. Kind of seems there's a little bit of that going on now, right? I don't mean just here in this ministry. I just mean in general. There's just so many people that are frustrated, that are looking at the situations right now, and so many people telling other people it's the mark of the beast, and now those kids that are getting it is the mark of the beast, and they're all lost as well. Those people should stop talking. You see, even in this here, it was a very hard saying. They thought, well, we got to eat him and we got to drink his blood. This is crazy. But they didn't fully understand this one piece right here, because they weren't really his. He knew that group that believed not. He was talking about the taking in of his words, the eating and drinking of his words that were going to give life. Because when this flesh is done, it means nothing. It meant nothing the whole time anyways. But we're to take care of it because it's been given to us, but it means nothing. It's all about the spirit within, right? But you see, what happened? He started walking away. The last thing I want people to do now is to be turning away. The last thing we want to do is have people just say, oh, enough of this. We're so close. We're so close, brothers and sisters. Okay? You know what else this reminded of? Because this is what the brother was asking too. When he was asking about it, it was really relating to what I was talking about in the book of Jasher. And the reason I'm sharing this part now is because just like we saw that part with Christ, okay? Here we are with Christ in John chapter 6. Very close to this timing we're looking for, right? Here he is in chapter 6. And if we look at it as a type and shadow of the season that we're in, there's a group that just aren't getting it. They're just uncertain. Is it really the time? What's going on? If I don't take the job, I'm going to lose my job. And it's only going to get worse. right? It's only going to get worse. What do people think? What do people who don't believe, what do our family and friends that don't believe in what we're talking about, don't believe in Christ? If you ask them that one simple question, what do you think is going to happen next? Do you think you're suddenly, oh, everybody, the tens of millions into the hundreds of millions, but tens of millions of people around the world now refusing to get the jab and are suddenly going to, the governments of the world are going to be like, oh, okay. All right, you guys held out long enough. Nothing else we can do. You guys can just go back to work. The vaccines work for us. You know, you don't do it. Okay, fine. That's not what's going to happen. And to us, we understand this. It makes sense. We know what's coming. Because we look around and we see these things and we've been given understanding of the years to come. So we should be the last, you would think, of people that might start, I'm not sure anymore. Right? It's kind of like these guys here. But when you look at the timing, this is John chapter 6. Look at who he says is left with them. Then said Jesus unto the 12, will you also go away? So there was a whole group of disciples. They were even called disciples that were following him and that turned and never followed him again because of it. And there was only the 12 left. And what happens now, when we finish this story, we go into chapter 7, and this is where we are right now, waiting on this Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, which we've been saying ever since the passing of Tabernacles, is going to be Hanukkah. Because we know it's related to the birth of Christ, and that was the key. Knowing that we are in the true 70th, that this 70th is in that 4th year, and things are made holy and given unto the Lord. That was a piece we've been seeking forever, and we got it. And we know that it's 50 days, 14 years, and then it's the final 50th Jubilee. And there's got to be a 50 days, and guess what? From day one of Hanukkah, the bride is gone before, the day before, then Hanukkah, day one, Christ's birth, he's here for 40 days, leaves, it goes to the 50th day, and what happens? The Holy Ghost at Tu B'Shavat, and the 14 years begin. 50 days, then the 14 years, and the 50th Jubilee. And so the reason I was bringing this up is, if you just follow the storyline in the type and shadow, we see how they're all now walking away, some here and there, and then they walk away, and all that's left are the 12. Just kind of interesting. It seems like we're in this type of thing going on now. And what's interesting about it is when the brother asked, I shared that piece of scripture, but I also shared specifically the one that he was looking for, which was here in the book of Jasher, I think chapter 3. And it says, it's about the time of Enoch, right? And all the sons of men assembled and came to Enoch that day, and all the kings of the earth with their princes and counselors remained with him that day. Then Enoch then taught the sons of men wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instruction, and he bade them serve the Lord and walk in his ways all the days of their lives. And he continued to make peace amongst them. And it was after this that he rose up and rode on his horse, and he went forth, and all the sons of men went after him, about 800,000 men, and they went with him a day's journey. And the second day he said to them, return home to your tents. Why will you go? Perhaps you may die. Some of them went from him, and those that remained went with him 6 days' journey. Okay, they started saying, hey, stop telling us to go. We're going to follow you to the end, even if it means we die. But that's like the 12, right? It's almost like this other group when he says, hey, why don't you guys just go home? We had a day's journey. I spoke to you. Come on, just go ahead, go home. Why don't you just go? Maybe you're going to die if you keep following me. And what happens? And some of them went from them. When you follow the story, you see that it was the kings and the princes and all those guys, right, that ended up walking from them. It's very similar to the type and story we just read in Luke. In John chapter 6. And why is it exciting? Because when we go from John chapter 6 and we go to John chapter 7, here we are, having been saying we're looking at the time of Hanukkah. That this time of Hanukkah is the true birth time of Christ. And it's only been in the last 100 years that it wasn't any longer believed that it was the time of Christ's birth, but that it was tabernacles as a possibility. Some say even Pentecost, you know, it's kind of everywhere. But when you go back and you really seek these things out, and knowing the year and the season that we're in and tabernacles is having passed, we know that there was a second tabernacles. Now we know what it was all about, and it was Hanukkah. Christ had to be born at a time that related to an 8th day. And there were only 2 in scripture. Okay, so we have this same type and shadow from chapter 6 of John. And when we go into chapter 7 of John, it's the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, which is the second tabernacles, which is Hanukkah. Well, what does Enoch's name mean? Hanuk. It's the word of Hanukkah. It's the portion of the word Hanukkah. His time was at Hanukkah. Probably his taking was at that time of Hanukkah with this group that continued to follow him as well. And when they were taken, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? So you see this John 6 going into John 7 connection. And here we are. Enoch, the same type of event going on, and the meaning of Enoch's name connected to this time of Hanukkah and the time that he's taken. Right? And then what do? They cause a census to come about. But then listen to this. Verse 38. Now let's start in 37. What happens? It says, and on the 8th day, all the kings that had been with him went back and forth, that number with Enoch, in the place from which he ascended into heaven. So they had to go back to the place which he ascended into heaven. And what happened? It says, and all those kings went to the place, and they found the earth filled with snow. And upon the snow were large stones of snow. Snow. So at this quote unquote harvest time, this vanishing time of Enoch, with those that followed him to the end, there was snow on the ground. Guys, are you getting it? Are you getting it? It's Hanukkah. It's Hanukkah, brothers and sisters. Let me show you some more. Check this out. We had some things. This is why the forum is so great. You know, not everybody's going to agree with everything that's there, but I allow to an extent, you know, sometimes maybe to a fault. One, I don't catch everything. And we've got some brothers and sisters that are watching for things as well. But there, you know, I do allow to an extent other opinions to be voiced. You know, I even allow them to share other people's channels and their videos with what they view and see from it. None of these other channels are promoting or talking about us. They hate us with this whole 14 years in open books. None of them believe us. You see, but I allow for it because we have the understanding. We have understanding. So I don't mind that if people want to share some other things because maybe they don't quite view this part the same. But we just can't let all of it be shared because some of it, we should understand it by now. And there's no need to look at other pieces and say, oh, the jab is the mark and all those kids are going to hell. That kind of craziness? doesn't belong anywhere within this ministry. All right. So we are lenient, but of course, there's always to a point, right? And the reason I was talking about that one a little bit of a tangent, but it was because there are many things that we share and that we talk about and we uplift in trying to discern his word better. Okay. Now listen to this. This was shared in the forum. It says the Hebrew word for winter is Korf. Okay, let me show you that. I think this is it. The Hebrew word for winter. See, it's used 7 times in scripture. Where's the word? Here it is. Okay, Korf. It's the word for winter. Wait until you see this. This is awesome. So the Hebrew word for winter is Korf. Korf is mentioned 7 times in the Bible, just like I showed. It is derived from the word cherif, meaning freshly gathered, plucked fruit, implying harvest season. What? I thought it meant winter. At the time of winter, at the time of snow falling, you know, you could say winter. We say, oh, it's got to be December 21st. No, it doesn't. Not biblically. Now, what the Jews may observe, yeah, we've got these seasons, but you're going to find out there's only 2 seasons in scripture. There's summer and winter. It may mention fall or something in there as well, or spring, but the Bible says there are only 2 seasons with the Lord, summer and winter. In fact, see, it's right here. It's in Genesis chapter 8. Do I have it right here? Or is it here? No, I think it was right here. Yeah, Genesis chapter 8. While the earth remaineth. See? So as long as the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest. There'll be cold and heat. Summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Go to chapter 74. Thou shalt set all the borders of the earth, thou hast made summer and winter. Okay? So it's not made up, it's right there in scripture. So at the time of winter, at the time of there being snow, there's a freshly gathered, plucked fruit implying harvest season. However, Korf is the rainy season in Israel, which according to the rabbis of the Talmud lasts 2 months. And do you want to know when it starts and ends? From the last half of Kislev. What would be the last half of Kislev? There's where it would start. And Kislev, the first half, to the first half of Shabbat. Where's the first half of Shabbat? So it would start somewhere around mid-Kislev, and it would end at about mid-Kislev. So the time of winter, the time of the snow, is right smack dab near the beginning of Hanukkah. Okay, there's where it starts. So right in this time of what they deem winter, and there being snow on the ground, is a time that means freshly gathered, plucked fruit, implying harvest season. Hello. Hello. And right there, 2 weeks into it, is Hanukkah. It kind of brings maybe a little bit more understanding to Proverbs chapter 25, where we read, where is it? Where is it? In chapter 25, here it is, verse 13. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest. Verse 13. Oh, I'm in Psalms. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Verse 13. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest. I remember seeing this one just about a month ago and saying, what? the heck is this all about? The cold of snow in the time of harvest? Now it's becoming more clear. Now it's becoming more clear. You know what else? If this is the time of harvest, the time of reaping in the cold and time of snow, do you know what else that brings to light? Back to Leviticus chapter 19. Remember Leviticus 19, our brother Ivan found this word, and in the 4th year, this is all talking about what? Shabbat 15, right? Tu B'Shavat, the festival of trees. And look at what it says. In the 4th year, all the fruit thereof shall be holy to praise unto the Lord. A celebration of the thanksgiving for harvest. And the harvest was brought in when? In the cold of snow. Craziness. Guys, I'm saying this so we can just see it more clearly and say, all right, I'm in. It's Hanukkah. It's that moment before, you can say the day before Hanukkah. It lines up still with Jesus's birthday that a couple of the younger at the time girls have had years ago. It lines up even with the timing that if there's a going to the mountain first and an event taking place that we shared about with the little Swedish boy, and you could tell the people, and then what? On the Sunday, everybody flew up in the pre-trib. Man, it's exciting, guys. And now remember this in Luke 11. We were sharing this from Luke 11. I was talking about it a moment ago. How here's the time when the Son of Man comes for his 40 days to do as Jonah did. And it's connected to the immediate story with it. That's about the word lighted a candle. And it says lighted a candle and put it on a candlestick, right? And then it says light 7 times. Well, the question that some have had, and I know I had it, just like Jimmy had, was, wait a second. Okay, this is exciting and I could see this connection, but this connection, wouldn't it be tabernacles and not Hanukkah? Because Hanukkah has all of these, you know, they have what, 8 or 9 candles to light on it. So why is this telling us 7 lights? And like I said, it dawned on me that night. And I said, wait a second, probably because they didn't start building an 8 or 9 candle menorah at the time. They stuck with the word. And that's exactly what happened. Listen to this. This is about the menorah, and it's directly connected to the Maccabees and the time of Hanukkah. The second temple, built after the Jews returned from exile in Babylon, contained one menorah that was seized in 169 by Epiphanes when he desecrated the temple. Judas Maccabees ordered construction of a new 7-branch candelabra or menorah. So he ordered the construction of a new one after they got Jerusalem, defeated Epiphanes, and that war was done. This was the time of Hanukkah. Okay, they reestablished the temple, they repaired, did all those things, and he ordered the construction of a new what? 8-branch? 9-branch? No. They rebuilt the 7-branch menorah, which he placed in the temple after the desecration of Antiochus. The menorah disappeared after the destruction of the second temple in 70 CE. So those pictures that we see in the destruction in 70 AD, and we see those pictures of the 7-stem menorah, it was the one that the Maccabees ordered constructed new. So now when we're looking at this, it's because the 7 one is the menorah, and it was even for Hanukkah. I believe, if I remember correctly, that I had read something that the 8 or 9 branch Hanukkah candle that they use was because of this, you know, just different sects, just like in Christianity. Oh no, it's going to be pre. Oh no, it's going to be mid. Oh no, it's going to be post. We're going to be here for the whole thing. You see? It's different viewpoints and all this confusion that comes about. And so what had happened is, I think it wasn't until the 1800s. Prior to that, it was always 7. That's what it's showing us here. It was telling us that even when he rebuilt it, at the time of Christ's birth, when Christ would come for 40 days, at the time of his birth, it would be Hanukkah. And the fact that there's 7 lights is because it was a 7 candle menorah. It was the 1800s that they start. I believe it was the 1800s, if I remember correctly, where they started bickering back and forth and saying, well, no, it's an 8. Well, because it's not tabernacles and it was a replacement as a second tabernacles, we're going to give it a different number, and whether it's 8 or 9 because of what happened, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what the Maccabees made. It was the official menorah. You see? So now we got a little bit more light, pardon the pun, brought to this story of the light and why it was 7. Why is it 7 in this type and shadow revelation that we're showing? Well, let's go a little bit further. I'm going to show you something that's pretty awesome. Okay. Again, you could see it's about Hanukkah. Listen to this. The reason for the Hanukkah lights, okay, remember, it was originally 7. Then they changed it to 8 or 9 because they want to separate Hanukkah from tabernacles. Because yes, it was the second tabernacles, but when everything was rebuilt and established again, they went and observed it at true tabernacles, and second tabernacles became its own thing as Hanukkah. So they gave it the additional lights. All right, listen to this. The reason for the Hanukkah lights is not for the, are you ready for this? Is not for the lighting of the house within. Hello. Think about that within ourselves. Those who are as Enoch was, those who are watching and praying and diligently seeking the Lord, is the light already within? Of course it is. The light is already within you, brothers and sisters. We're not looking to have the light within us. It already is within us. So check this out. The reason for the Hanukkah lights is not because of that light within us. Okay? We're not looking for that light within us. We already have it. So then what are the Hanukkah lights for? Listen to this. But rather for the illumination of the house without. What? So if you already have the light within as a believer, what is the believer who is watching and praying and seeking and diligently loving the Lord? They already have the light within. And what is every one of them waiting for? The illumination of the house on the outside? Hello. How many dreams, visions, movies, TV shows are out there who have all showed and depicted and seen that when it happens, they see streaks of light flying into the sky, that everybody turns into light. You see that? The light is already within. But at the pre-trib, at the escape, we're not going up in this human flesh garbage. Remember, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. So what has to happen? Our true selves, the real stuff, not this fake stuff of the earth. The real stuff will what? Become illuminated. We will be illuminated Our house will shine on the outside. We will illuminate. Remember when Christ came and or when people see him in heaven or see the Father and they can see, but he's always so bright and shiny. But some people said, you know, they've seen feet like a man's feet and hands, even though it was huge, but he was still very bright. Moses too, when he came down, his face was so shiny they had to cover it. We're waiting for the, oh my goodness, did you hear that? Oh my goodness, that just reminded me of something. Luke chapter 9, right? Luke chapter 9, when we've been talking about the transfiguration story, right? The story of the transfiguration. When his countenance was changed and altered and he was glistening and white. I love it. I love it when these little things just pop up. Because remember, that's the one for Luke. This in the story of this, it's believed. I remember Perry Stone teaching on this a long time ago. It's believed that what had happened, that Moses, when he came down the mountain and his face is shining bright, that they had to put a veil over it. What had happened was he had been transported into the future at that time when he was there with Christ on the Mount of Transfiguration. It's a very interesting thought, but in both cases and in both types and shadows, what was it? What was it? Do you remember that story? Oh my goodness. Let me show you that one too. I gotta show it to you too. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Exodus 34:22, down below there, to the end of Exodus 34. Right? Remember Exodus 34? What do we show and tell and explain about in Exodus 34? When the first fruits of the wheat harvest at the year's end is going to be observed. Now we know where this ingathering at the year's end looks to me like it's the new year of trees that we've been talking about now for a little while. You see, not the escape, but when it's going to be observed. It's exactly the first fruits that is brought to the Lord, that becomes the Lord's, that we were reading about at Tu B'Shavat in the 4th year. Look at this. And what happens when we follow this story down? Do you guys remember? Remember chapter 34? Chapter 34 of Exodus is what? That time that represents the 40 days of the Son of Man. Right? So the bride is gone, right? All in this timing. And look what happens. Now it's the time of Moses, right? His 40 days, and what happens? Moses was not that he knew not that his skin of his face shone while he talked with them. Behold, while it was shining, everybody's freaking out. They had to cover it with a veil. In the story of the 40 days and nights, when it begins with what? The pre-trib. We've been teaching this for probably close to 2 years of Exodus 34. We've been teaching in Luke chapter 9 for at least 2-3 years maybe, that the story of the transfiguration is part of the pre, mid, and post Luke, Mark, and Matthew story. And in both cases, what are we reading? Their illumination of the outside of the house. Oh, this is awesome. I had no idea till it struck me now. I knew what I was getting at with this, but those two pieces of scripture, oh man, that was awesome. So what do we see? Let's read this again. It says, the reason for the Hanukkah lights is not the lighting of the house within, but rather for the illumination of the house without. Listen to this. So that passer-by should see it and be reminded of the holiday's miracle. Are you ready for this? This is so awesome. Okay, I shared some of this in a posting in the forum as well. So we're waiting for the illumination of the outside of us at the escape. And when that happens, what's it going to be? So that passerbys should see it and be reminded of the holiday's miracle. Do you know what that sounds like, brothers and sisters? Romans chapter 16. Are you ready for this? For those of you who don't know, we've got some great teachings that there's this very cool mystery within Scripture, which is the last chapter of Romans, the last chapter of First Corinthians, and the last chapter of Second Corinthians. It's about the end of it is talking about in Romans 16. The end of Romans 16 is talking about a group that was taken, an event that has happened that was a mystery. And then this chapter starts with the worker group who's going to work for the churches of the Gentiles. And these are the types and shadows of the seals workers who are going to work during seals. All right. Then you go to First Corinthians, you go to the last chapter in 16, you go to the end of it, and the greeting that you get is the group that was spoken about in Romans 16, and those that were with them helping during that time of seals, they're now gone, and they're greeting this group here that is now working to bring in the saints, if you will, and it relates to a group who is going to work trumpets, who is also called the first fruits, and this is the trumpet workers. So you have a group taken, and then the story of a group that will work. Then you've got the group that was working and those that were with them that are taken, and you've got another group that will work. Okay, this group is the trumpets workers. These are the representations of the 144. When you get to Second Corinthians chapter 13, look at what it says right off the bat. This is the third time I'm coming. Hello. This is now talking about him coming, feet down, for them to be prepared. And when you come to the bottom to see the greeting, you see it says that all the saints salute you, because now they've all been taken and they're all there waiting on the Lord. It's coming in his coming down. It's all in order. Okay, I don't know how I came across it. I've taught on it many times over the last 3 years, but I want to show you something in particular, because Romans 16 and the greeting that takes place in Romans chapter 16 at the end is 100% the representation of the vanishing of the bride of Christ. Okay, and now listen to what it says. Why is this so key? Because remember, we're talking about the illumination of the outside of the house and those who will see it and be reminded of the miracle that took place. Are you ready? Listen to this. Romans 16 verse 25. Now to him that is of power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery which was kept secret since the world began. Do you want to know what that is, brothers and sisters? This is why, this is kind of like a little break in what I'm about to show you. But do you know what this is about? Do you know why it's a mystery that's been kept secret since the world began? Because if you go read the book of Revelation, this is why you have some people that do not believe in a pre-trib rapture. They're at least mid-trib. Okay, those that are post-trib, we've got videos on this as well to explain why people see mid, post, why they say see pre, but how they mix it up, and how those that are mid are more true in their understanding if you only understand 7 years than a pre or a post is. And I know it sounds confusing, but it's perfectly in line with scripture and makes 100% sense once you understand who these gospels are speaking to. But when you come to this and you're reading chapter 5 or you're reading chapter 7 and you're seeing the tribulation and all this stuff beginning, there's nobody being taken. There's the dead that are under the altar that sacrifice their lives. Okay, stars of heaven fall into the earth, and then him that sits on the throne and hide us from him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. You're thinking, well, where was the pre-trib in all this? You come to chapter 7, you see the 144,000 sealed, and then what do you see? After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man can number, of all nations and kindred and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. Now let me ask you, is this a mystery? Self-explanatory, right? If this is supposed to be a mystery, they did a terrible job at hiding it, because it's right here. It's the great multitude, rapture, standing before the throne. Hello? There's no mystery in this. It's right here. But guess what? It's after the tribulation portion of the seals. This is why in a 7-year thinking, some of the pre-tribbers are kind of right in that thinking. Because you would think, well, 3.5 years of seals, and then it's the rapture of the great multitude. Because the great multitude is right there in chapter 7, after the 6 seals, but before that 7th, which is a portion of the year. Okay? So my point in showing you this is to say there's no mystery in the great multitude rapture. The mystery is in the pre-trib. The mystery is in the pre-trib, when they will, exterior will turn to light and vanish. Listen to what it says. According to the revelation of the mystery which was kept secret since the world began, but now is made, hello, apparent. It is rendered apparent, but now has been made apparent. Okay, let's go further into the word. It has been made apparent, shining. It's been made known. What else does it say? To lighten, to shine, to appear. Okay, all these things are to turn to light. Something that has become light, that has been made to appear, that has been rendered apparent to all who see it, which means luminous, rays of light. So you have, but now is made, luminous rays of light, has become bright and has been made apparent to all who see it. And by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, here it is, made known. Isn't that what it means? Made known, that is, show, appear, made known to all nations. For what? For what? Going to church on Sunday? No. For the obedience of faith. So you have a group that will be changed to light, who was a mystery since the world began, but has now been manifested into light, has been rendered apparent by all who see it, made known to all nations. Hello. Doesn't that sound very familiar? That those whose outside of their house will illuminate, so that the passerbys would see it and be reminded of the holiday's miracle. Man, every video, brothers and sisters, that I have been putting out in the last little bit, I always have, you see, and then there was one, I always have some stuff at the beginning that ties in and gives even more proof, more evidence that Hanukkah is the season and time. And now we can also add to that wonderful list of the understanding of it Exodus 34 and Luke chapter 9 with the transfiguration story. Man, this is exciting, guys. I just love this stuff. I love it. You see, I'm so excited by this, guys, and you know, to even finish up on that story I was talking about a little while ago, you know, this season and time that we're in, and how some people, you know, they are trickling off. You know, we're always praying to bring them back and bring new people, but and I don't mean just us, I just mean even as a in general as well going on out there, because of this confusion and wondering how long, Lord. It's been a year and a half of this, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to be getting better anytime soon. It's only going to get worse. And so the when I do videos, guys, I got to tell you, I have had maybe not so many, but I have had a good number of times that over the 4.5 years when I was just down and out and bummed, I just thought, you know, forget it. You know, it doesn't mean I'm not going to follow the Lord. It doesn't mean I'm still not going to search and seek, but I was just like, forget it. I'm just going to pack it up. You know, what the heck? I put it out there. Let them deal with it now. You know, because the enemy's attacking, and you get down and you get bummed with certain things going on. And, you know, I can't. And do you know why I can't? Obviously, of course, because of the Lord. But in a physical realm in this world, you know the reason I can't? Because of you guys. Each and every one of you is the reason why I can't stop doing what I do. What kind of teacher would I be in receiving of this revelation if I said, forget it, they get it, they got the basics, they get it overall? What kind of brother would that be, knowing what I know and just saying, you know? And I know people will say, well, that's why the Lord chose you. He knew that you would do it, and I understand that. But I'm saying I've had many times, a number of times, where I was going to pack it in, but it's because of you guys that I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. And I'm saying this because I want you to know that you guys are having that effect not only on me, but on each other as well. Because we're uplifting each other. That's what this forum is for. We're uplifting each other. We're praying for each other. We're doing what we can for each other from remote places around the earth. We're lifting each other up. We're asking questions. Right? So that's why, you know, when we see people leaving, and man, please don't. Just, you don't have to be involved in every question and answer and everything else, but don't leave now. Let us strengthen each other, pick each other up, because we're knocking on the door. You know, I think I'm going to call this video Game On, because we're right at the door. We're now in the month. So the last thing we want to do, or to have anybody do, is to turn and lose some of that energy and focus at such a critical time as this. Okay? It's so awesome. It's so exciting, guys. And I know it's like pulling teeth sometimes, and it can feel long and excruciating because we are watching. Do you understand? It's because we are watching. If you weren't watching, it would seem just like that. But when you're watching, whew, things can seem really long, right? I understand why some people just want to look for the next day and the next date and the next possible date and the next possible date, because it gets them through from 1 week to the next, because watching is long. And when you know that it's 2 months later, it's more excruciatingly long, and that time feels all that much further. But now it's game on. Now we are in the month. Now we must remain ready and diligent, because the time is at hand for the illumination of the house without. So awesome. Let me show you something else. You guys remember this? You know, there could be contradictions to what people think this was. You know, I saw something, it was in the forum, I deleted it because I don't want to get that type of conversation going on with all of our brothers and sisters. You know, either you're going to believe it or you don't. That's up to you. Seek it with the Lord, pray on it. For anybody that's new in the open books in the 14 years, go pray about it. Go ask the Lord and then seek it in his letters that he left for us to read. And see if it's not true for yourself. Okay, that's what we have to do. And there was something posted that somebody, not somebody in our ministry did, but somebody did a video about Rob Skiba and that he was just a shill and he was working for the enemy. Look, don't be sharing that with any of us, right? Let's not get into that stuff, right? If the person declared and loved the Lord, and whether you believed in his views and what he spoke about, that's debatable within yourself. But to say that he wasn't actually a believer and he was with the enemy, man, I don't have any right to say anything like that. I don't actually know the person, right? So we got to be careful with things like that. And I know when it comes to the Shroud of Turin, there are some people that think that it's all a big scam as well. But the further you look into it, man, oh man, does it ever blow your mind. When you see the imprint and the imagery and the things that were found that they couldn't see decades ago, and now that they're able to see, it's mind-blowing. You see, we shared this in a video not too long ago, well, maybe a few months ago now, that was incredible. And it was a revelation that we received here in this ministry as well. And that is, remember I told you, it's the 50 days, 14 years, and then the 50th Jubilee. That when the Lord, through the Holy Spirit, gave me the words that you are, in brackets, right on target, and it was connected to the number 50, I knew that we had now had the code, but of course we didn't understand where that code was applied. Where was that 50 days going to begin and end? Now we do believe we've got it because there is no more time. Okay, there's not the 75, 6, 90th year, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't exist for all of it to begin. But if you remember a few months back, we've got this video. Look at the image. It's the head of the ox, which is Aleph. And the right eye in the constellation of Taurus, this right eye is called Ayin. And in the Hebrew alphabet, there are 22 letters, and each letter corresponds to their numbers as well. Like 1 2, they go 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 20 30 40 50 60 70 80 90, excuse me, and then 100 200 300 400. You get what I'm saying? Well, this ayin represents 70. This eye represents 50, and it's actually called, let me share it with you guys that are new, that haven't seen this. Aldebaran, it's called the star in the bull's eye. It is called the Bullseye Star, okay? It is the 14th brightest star. I love this, man, because you see, our ministry is the revelation of the 14 years. And it's the 14th brightest star in the sky. It's called the Bullseye, and it means, where was I? And it means, oh, let me go to what this is. So we're talking about this pendant, and this is why I want to bring it up. This is what was written on that pendant that they could now read because of technology. And if you read like the Hebrews do, you have the letter Ayin, you have Aleph, and then you have Nun. Okay? What that represents is exactly this right here. It's the head of the bull. Well, which bull? The constellation of Taurus. In the constellation of Taurus, this eye is Ayin. Aleph is the ox as a whole, that ox head, which means beginning. And then you have the bullseye. Okay? It's literally called Bullseye. And it's the 14th brightest star. And what does Bullseye represent? Bullseye, just like a target on a dartboard, is 50. So you've got 70, 1 or beginning, which means Aleph, ox, and then 50. So 70, beginning, 50. I thought that was pretty cool because we know what this means. This is 70, beginning, or Aleph, 50. And what else do we know? We know that 50 is the bullseye on the left side when looking up in the sky. And it also represents the 14th brightest star. So when the 50 is over, the 14 years begin. It's just mind-blowing. But I want to show you something a little bit closer to home for us that we're in right now. 70, beginning, 50. Watch this. La Palma. There have been dreams and visions of La Palma going off for decades. There's a great video of a guy that's about 10 years old now. I think maybe almost 10 years old. It was in, I think, 2012. And the Lord took him up. We shared it not too long ago. The Lord took him up, showed him. He didn't know where he was. He was up above the mountains. And there was a volcano. And he knew he was in the Canary Islands. It ends up breaking off. And then there was a major mega tsunami. And it came across to the east coast of America and other parts of the world. We've been showing and we've been saying that we understand now, we believe that this is the beginning of everything, and that could very well be the white horse rider, because tsunamis, one of the words for tsunami is white horse. Okay, for those that are interested, we did a video on that as well right here. They're called white horses. Tsunamis are called white horses. That was just incredible. And so this is why it's interesting, because it started on September 19th was the beginning of the eruption. So if you take September 19th, all right, back here, when it started, and you add September 19th, 2021, and you add 70 days, look at where you get. November 28th, what we call escape day. So you add 70, remember the pendant, go from right to left, read it as the Jews do. And what do we have? 70 from the beginning of La Palma, which is a very important and very specific dreams and words people have been getting decades and years before it even erupted. All right. So it brings us to the 28th. There's 70. And then what? Then we have beginning 50. Okay. So you got 70, beginning 50. Watch this. When you add from the 28th, because you have to understand how this calculates. Okay. You go from November 28th and you add 50 days, beginning 50. All right. Look at where you get. January 22nd. It is 120 days from September 29th, the beginning of La Palma, to January 17th, which is the revelation of Leviticus chapter 19, Tu B'Shavat, on January 17th, the Festival of Trees that we've been showing you is directly connected to Leviticus 19 when the celebration takes place. And what did it say? Do you guys remember that? That the party will begin. Remember that? Leviticus 19. Let me show you. For the word praise. You see, but in the 4th year. What are we now? We're in the 4th year. Okay? Because from, as you guys know, 1948, they came into the land by Tu B'Shavat. Whether it was 1 month, 1 day, 6 months, it all turns one. And then you start, then 2, then 3, which means right now we're in the 4th, and it turns 4 on Tu B'Shavat, January 17th, 2022. And it's called what? There's our celebration for Thanksgiving. This story is Tu B'Shavat. If you go read up on Tu B'Shavat, it will tell you it's Leviticus 19. And particularly this story of when all manner of trees and the fruit from them can be brought in. You see how exciting that is? So what does it equal? 70 beginning 50. Who is the beginning, brothers and sisters? Christ is the beginning. Christ is the beginning. And what do we know of Christ being the beginning? What's going to happen? He's coming for 40 days. And when have we been saying he's coming to begin his 40 days? On his birthday, the beginning of you can say Second Tabernacles, but the beginning of Hanukkah, day 1 at his birth on the 25th of Kislev, as you know, evening to evening, the way the Jews calculate. The bride was gone early in the morning on the 28th, and Christ returns to begin his 40 days. So what do you have? 70 beginning 50, and Christ is the Aleph, the Alpha, the beginning. And he's coming on his birthday, as we've been teaching, to begin his to warn, as he said he would in Luke 11, as Jonah did, and that he would do it for 40 days. You guys know the whole story, right? Even the Muslims are aware that a guy claiming to be Messiah is coming for 40 days, and they think he's the Antichrist because they've been told ahead of time, so they are not quote unquote deceived by this guy, but they've already been deceived ahead of time so that they don't fall for it. The enemy has deceived them into thinking it's the Antichrist. But ask any Christian, how long is the Antichrist going to be here for? They're not going to tell you 40 days. So everybody that gets deceived in thinking he's the Antichrist, after 40 days is going to say, but I thought he was the Antichrist. Nope. He was Messiah. He was the Son of Man here for 40 days, the beginning of the 50 after the 70. Hello. So awesome. Just incredible. Well, that brings us into this final part. And it's a great little segue. You see, I love when I let the Spirit, I've got some things set up and where I want to go for the most part, but I just let the Spirit flow. And what a perfect flow that was. Because right as we're talking to you, the beginning, Aleph, on his birthday, beginning the 40, I wanted to get into this conversation of Ezekiel. If you guys remember, okay, here we are in 2021. Now, I want to lay this out right off the start because it can be very messy, and I don't want people's heads to explode in trying to say, well, this year and to that year and half of this year to a portion of that year, but is it 2021? Is it 2022? You see what I'm saying? And the reason it can seem confusing or difficult to follow in relation to what year it's in is because we're on a flipping Gregorian calendar. All right? We're on this Gregorian calendar that is all twisted. And so when we put in these years, we're a bunch of Gentiles putting them into an understanding in the life that we're living now, Gregorian calendar, to the timing of God's true timing and how it would play out while we're telling you in a Gregorian calendar. You follow? So that's why it's like part of 2021 into 2022, but really it's 2021. You see what I'm saying? And so that's where I don't want you to get all confused in it. But I want to show you this. Okay, 2021. So we're in the year 2021. We know that this is the representation here of the time of the 40 days of Christ beginning. We know it's connected to his birth. We understand the chapters 1, 2, 3, 4 of Luke is the escape of the bride, the 40 days of the Son of Man, the return of the Son of Man at the end of seals, the return feet down. That's on Mount on Mount Zion at the end of seals, but then feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of trumpets. That is Luke in the type and shadows of the conversations going on when Luke said he knew all things in order. The end time open book revelation of it is Luke 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why when you get to Luke chapter 5, you begin to read the story of Mark chapter 1. And what happens in Mark chapter 1? It starts with the 40 days. And then it's him choosing in that time too. He's choosing his apostles. That's why you don't see that story then start until Luke chapter 5. Because there was more mystery hidden within Luke 1, 2, 3, 4 in relation to the end before the story of the end begins in chapter 5. And that's, you know, again, in that story of the mystery, it's the pre-trib also, to make a final point on that. It's the pre-trib that was the mystery. There was nothing so obvious in the pre-trib, but things were caught here and they were kind of noticed here, and you would see other things and you'd think, well, it's got to be pre. And then you'd see other things and you say, no, it's got to be mid, like when you read Revelation. And so where the biggest mystery was not mid, because it was right there in Revelation 7. It was not post, because we're told he returns feet down from where he left. So the biggest mystery, which is why it was there in Romans 16 and begins everything, and the turning to light and the illumination made apparent to all those throughout the earth now, to all nations. That's why that one was the biggest mystery, because it wasn't just right clearly written there in scripture for everybody to understand like the other two were. Okay, so here we are now. We're in Ezekiel. Now in Ezekiel, what I'm going to share with you is something I've considered for a long time, and I've always ended up putting it behind, just putting it to the back burner. But I had seen some things in it that had certainly made me question, but I couldn't fully see it. And we're not going to go into all of it. I'll make a couple points and then the main point I wanted to share. And one of the reasons is because if you go to Ezekiel and you get to chapter, you go to chapter 21, like we were talking about, 21 of Ezekiel is pretty darn clear. Here we are in 2021. And 2021 is connected to the time when the Son of Man will be here for 40 days. I think there's a prophet lady. She's traveled around, and then she goes from places throughout the U.S., crossed the U.S. 9 times. And I think the Lord woke her up, if I remember correctly, in 2019. And I've watched a couple of things that were shared from her. And it was, and she said that the Lord told her that there were 3 groups. There was the bride, there were those who are sleeping, and those who can't see. Darn right. That's exactly it. So when I heard that, and when other brothers and sisters heard that, and they shared it in the forum, and I watched it, that really perked my ears. Finally, I'm hearing somebody calling themselves a prophet who is clearly using "thus saith the Lord" and says, I know when I say that I must one day stand before him and declare that I said those because he told me to say them. So she's very well aware, and I believe it's preparing the bride or something like that. And what do we know about that? This is where we are right now. We're in this final little portion of the 7 right here, and the bride's about to go. This is for the sleeping, as we were saying, and then they go. And then this is for these the blind, right? The Jews, the blinded. And this is when the Lord returns. So you have a taking, and a returning. It is all 3 groups. But what she also said in a video, I haven't watched a lot. I think I've seen 3 videos of hers. But there was one not too long ago that I watched, and she said that the Lord told her he was coming to take his bride in 2021. And she said, "Thus saith the Lord, he told me he is taking the bride in 2021." All right. So where are we? 2021. There's 2 months left to go, and we're telling you it's Hanukkah, and we've been telling you Hanukkah now for over a month. Hanukkah, 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 Hanukkah. It is Hanukkah. We've understood it now. And we've continued to show just mind-blowing connections. So here's the thing. Looking into Ezekiel and already knowing what we know here from chapter 33 to 48, and knowing that this is a 40-day warning piece, I said, well, how can 21 also be a connection? All right. It starts with the 40 days of the Son of Man, or the warning, and then being attacked, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But you got to say, well, wait a second. 21, like 2021, is the 40 days of the Son of Man. That's what this is all about. We've shared on this one a number of times. It's absolutely incredible. And it says, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man. Remember, Ezekiel is a type and shadow of Christ, in that he's being called the Son of Man. So we have this type and shadow relating to this is to come, when he's coming as the Son of Man for 40 days. And what do we know he's going to do? He's going to warn. He said that he would warn, as Jonah did. And so it says, Son of man, set thy face toward Jerusalem, and drop thy word toward the holy places, and prophesy against the land of Israel. And say to the land of Israel, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I am against thee, and I will draw forth my sword out of his sheath, and will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked. And it's all about warning that I'm about to draw out the sword, warning that it's coming, warning it doesn't matter who's there, all of them I'm about to remove. Verse 7 says, And it shall be, when they say unto thee, Wherefore sighest thou? Why are you sighing? That thou shalt answer, For the tidings, because it cometh. Right? For the tidings, it's coming. This announcement, we've heard that it's coming, that he's coming, that this destruction is coming. And all hands shall be feeble, and every spirit shall faint, and all the knees shall be made weak as water. Verse 9, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord, say, a sword is sharpened and furbished. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. And he hath given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened, and it is furbished to be given into the hand of the slayer. This is all about the Son of Man warning in the land of Israel and to Jerusalem that the sword is about to be given. This is another reason we've been showing everybody and saying now that the white horse rider is the Son of Man for 40 days, is the representation of Luke's discourse, a period of time before nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Okay, there's a piece of scripture that gives it away. We see it right here. Right? Everybody knows this. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. This is the red horse rider when the sword is given to the slayer. And then there's earthquakes and fearful sight and pestilence and famines. But only Luke's do you see this. But before all these. Meaning there's a period of time before nation against nation, the red horse rider, the sword being the slayer. And this portion of time is what we're reading here of the Son of Man beginning at Hanukkah from his birthday, warning Jerusalem and the land of Israel, telling them the sword is coming, the sword is coming. And when we read in Luke chapter 21 further, we see, and when you see Jerusalem compassed about, the attack doesn't happen during those 40 days, it happens after, but it's in that time frame of around the beginning of the 14 years, which would be mid-late January, that the attack would happen after those 40 days are over, some point after the 40 days, because the warning was given. The 40-day warning, as Jonah did, Jesus said he would do as Jonah did, and we're told that he would do it to Jerusalem and to Israel, the land of Israel. And so if they're being surrounded during that time and they're about to be attacked, that it's nigh at hand, the destruction, then that means it's going to be shortly after that time is up. Because why? At the red horse rider time, the sword is given. Okay? This is what it's all about here in Luke 21, and we've spoken about it a number of times. Okay? It's exciting when you see it. It's so crystal clear. Okay? It is Luke's discourse. But then what happens? Well, as I said near the opening, I was shared a video, and also as I had looked at this in the past, you know, because 2021, here we were in 2021, we're expecting it was going to happen at some point in 2021. We really thought at the point of tabernacles, because we understood an 8th day, and then it came and went, and we understood it was called second tabernacles. That's why it's called the feast of the Jews' feast of tabernacles. And ever since, we've been saying it is Hanukkah. And so looking at this, we're still in the understanding that it's going to be in 2021. But when you take it forward and you say, okay, this is his warning time, so this is really before the 14 years even starts. So this is warning time. The 14 years begins after the warning time, after Tu B'Shavat. Is it part of chaos and everything else? Yeah, absolutely. Millions will have turned to light, vanished, and chaos will be on the earth. So then you have chapter 22. Look at that. Chapter 22 is in sometime early in 2022. Now thou, son of man, will thou judge? Now we know the son of man is going to be in here anymore, but it's the story still of Ezekiel as the son of man. All right. We were looking at these things in types and shadows. Now thou, son of man, will thou judge? Will thou judge the bloody city? Hello. Now the city's all bloody. You follow? Why is it all bloody? Because the surrounding that we were reading about in Luke's discourse, and the warning that he was given in chapter 1, well, now the sword has been furbished. The sword has been given to the slayer, and now the city's all bloody. So it seemed like things were following in order. So you'd be like so it'd be like first year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll look at chapter 28. 8, 9, 10, and then you'd say, well, wait a second. 8, 9, 10, 11, but this is an 8. So this is where I was saying, I don't want you guys to get confused, because they're saying, well, wait a second. When you get to 2031, is 2031 the 10th year? Or would 2031 be talking about the portion in the 11th year? You see, this is where I don't want you guys to get so thrown off by looking at it and saying, well, is it really, is the count really wrong that it should be here? It should be at this time. When we're reading these things, we're trying to discern, is it part of this portion of the Gregorian calendar year that was in this other portion of 31, or is it in the 11th year end time portion that relates to the Gregorian calendar being in 31? You see what I'm saying? This is where I don't want there to be confusion, because it's easy to get caught off guard or to be distracted by it, because there are things that become clear. But what happened is, when you look at it, then you would say, there's the first year, because this is the 40 days. So this is the first year, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 8, 9, 10. But when you look at it, is it really 10 or is it 11? And you're going to see why I'm bringing it up. 12, 13. Well, you see, now you'd say, well, is this really 13? Is it the beginning of 14? And here's why. And here's why I hadn't shared it in the past. Because now suddenly we're at chapter 33 again, talking about this watchman who is to warn the people that the sword is coming. What? You see, so what I couldn't understand in all this time is, how is it that if there is this possibility of chapters to years playing out in Ezekiel from 21 into 33-ish, not going all the way through again, but going into 33, which should represent then the timing of what? What should it represent the timing of? Well, we've got 2033 here, which we know has a representation of the 13th year, which is at the end when the Lord comes, feet down on the Mount of Olives. And guess what happened? I said, wait a second. The 33 could be the beginning, but the 33 we know is the beginning. We know is a type and shadow with what's revealed. We know chapter 40, we know 39 is the Gog Magog war that everybody talks about, and it's exactly when it's going to take place. We know chapter 40 says in the 14th year. You see, in the big picture, it is the 14th year. And what's going to happen? They're going to start rebuilding the temple. And what do we read about? All of these things that they're to build and how to build it and the size and everything of the temple. And when it's all done, what happens? It's the final Jubilee and all the tribes are receiving their land. So we've understood this, but I couldn't wrap my head around how chapter 21, is there another type and shadow of chapters to years for us to understand? Because it would overlap with chapter 33. And something dawned on me. You see, we know that chapter 33 is the watchman's warning, the blowing of the trumpet, that the sword is coming upon the land. Well, brothers and sisters, do you know what we've been teaching in this ministry? When the Lord comes feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of 13 years, right? Yes, he's here for 40 days and he leaves. He comes at the end of seals, and they're going to rebuild the city and the streets and the temple, and then he's going to be cut off at the 3.5 year mark, 10.5 years into the whole of tribulation, 3.5 years into trumpets. He's going to be cut off, but he's going to return 2.5 years later. Okay, half of 11, 12, and 13. This is when he returns. So if this is a possibility of representing 33, guess what? Do you know that the story of the ark isn't exactly a whole year, but that it's like a year and change? And what else do we know? We know that the end of days begins after the escape, with the Son of Man doing miracles and signs and wonders and all these beautiful things and warning for 40 days. But what else do we know? We know Luke in order, brothers and sisters. We know chapter 1 is the reference to the escape of the bride of Christ, right? And he visited, how the Lord God of Israel hath visited and redeemed his people. We know from Acts chapter 15 that God came and take out a people from among the Gentiles for his name first. And then we come to chapter 2, and we were explaining, you guys all know this, that the purpose and the revelation of Christ and the Gospel of Luke 1, 2, 3, 4 being in order of these revelations, that it was connected to his birth and the type and shadow of the 40 days. This is why we were so interested and so badly we're wanting to understand where his birth was, because this was the representation of when he would come for 40 days connected to his birth. But then what? And his birth, so meaning what? When he comes at his birth, he's coming for 40 days as the Son of Man, right? Well, then this is the end of seals, the end of the sixth seal, right? Going into in that seventh year of trumpets. We've talked about it before, or sorry, seventh year of seals. And finally is what? When he comes at the end of the sixth year of trumpets, what's going to happen first? He's going to be tempted 40 days by the enemy. Hello. I suddenly went, wait a second. Wait a second. It begins with a 40, but when he returns, it will end / begin with a 40. Just like Luke chapter 2 and Luke chapter 4. So I suddenly realized that they can overlap. That definitely they can overlap, because when he comes at the end of 33, what's the warning going to be for? Blowing of the trumpet, because the sword is coming. You see, the sound of the trumpet to maketh warning. If the sword comes, what sword will this be, brothers and sisters? What sword will this be? Let me show you what sword it will be. It's Zechariah chapter 14. You see, we've talked about this many times. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. This is the Gog-Magog war at the end of seals, at the end of the sixth seal. This is when the Antichrist is killed and thrown into the pit. And now what is he saying? Now is time for the other fight, which is the second sword that we've talked about from Luke many times. And this is the destruction that comes upon them. So what happened before this sword came? Well, there was the 40-day warning. There was the 40 days to prepare them and to warn them and to understand that this sword was coming. So we can definitely have an overlapping within Ezekiel 33. And how all of this was building and came about was because we have known Ezekiel 21 now for a while. But as I started reading, I was reading because in this video, this brother started talking about chapter 31 of Ezekiel. And the reason he spoke about it was because he was talking about how there were giants in the beginning. Okay, we all understand this. You know, Genesis 6 and so forth. There were giants in the land in those days. They were with the human women, right? So the fallen angels that were with the human women, and they bred and made Nephilim. So this was the conversation that he was having, and talking about the size that people must have been, you know, with these angels and the people, because everything was pure back then. The air, the food, everything was completely and 100% pure and perfect. And they were living for hundreds of years. So of course they were going to be huge. They were probably all, I don't know, dozens of feet tall, 15 feet tall. I don't know. They must have all been huge. In particular, imagine now those Nephilim, that was the race of giants that came from those who would have already been big people because everything was perfect and they were living for hundreds of years. But now imagine the size of the Nephilim, who were called giants. And so what had happened is as I was listening to that nugget, we've heard this before. It wasn't a big deal. But what stood out to me was the scripture that he went to to show that there were indeed giants. Right back into the Garden of Eden, right? Listen to this. Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon, with fair branches and with a shadowing shroud, and of high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters that made him great, the deep set him up on high. Verse 5, therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the field. Let's keep going. And his boughs were multiplied, and his branches became long because of the multitude of waters when he shot forth. All of the fowls of heaven made their nests in his boughs, and under his branches did all the beasts of the field bring forth their young, and under his shadow dwelt all great nations. Dwelt all great nations. Thus was he fair in his greatness, in the length of his branches, for his root was by great waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The fir trees were not like his boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like his branches, nor any tree in the garden of God was like unto him in his beauty. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. Listen to this. You see, so what ends up happening, guys? Who is this? Well, this is Satan, of course. This was Satan and being all puffed up. Look at what he's called. The Assyrian. The Assyrian. And do you know why it caught my attention with all this? Because it was chapter 31. So I thought, well, is it possible if I look at the chapters to years, where is 31? Well, it could be part of 10 or the 11th year. What is being in the 11th? 10 and a half, right? After you turn 10, the next day after, you're in the 11th year, and then you turn 11 at the end of that year. So 10 and a half years is halfway through this number right here. You're in the 11th year. And what is it? Well, it also equaled 31. So I thought, wait a second, this is sounding familiar. But I said I caught something else too. Because look at how it starts. In the 11th year. Hello. That was the nail in the coffin right there. In the 11th year, in chapter 31, is when the Assyrian, who was a cedar of Lebanon, is going to be cast out, is going to be sent down to the earth. Back then, it related to the time with Pharaoh as well. There was this battle with these guys, right? So, what is this timing? What does this sound like to those of you who've been following this ministry and understand precisely what this timing is? You got it. Zechariah chapter 11, in the 11th year, that is connected to 31. Let's go have a look at Zechariah, 14 chapters to the 14 years. And Zechariah 11 says what? Open thy doors, O Lebanon, that the fire may devour thy cedars. Howl, fir tree, for the cedar is fallen, because the mighty are spoiled. Howl, O ye oaks of Bashan, for the forest of the vintage is come down. I have been teaching you guys this for 2.5, 3 years, that this is the representation of Satan losing his battle in heaven against Michael and his angels, having been fighting them for the 1260 days. People don't understand when it says war in heaven, it doesn't mean they just batted their eyes and they were defeated. Okay, it was the 1260. During this 1260 days where they fled into the wilderness, this group here, there was a battle going on in heaven. If you follow the storyline of Revelation chapter 12, which we have videos on, which is the depiction, it is like a big picture of the entire time of tribulation to the time of the final time, end times, and half a time. When this happens here in Revelation 12:14, they fly on the wings of an eagle. It's Psalms 90 and 10 when they fly away, which is 10.5 years, leaving 3.5 years, time, end times, and half a time to the end of the tribulation. It's all here. So when you follow the storyline and you understand, as I said, the 14 years, when you grasp the gospels and the timing of the 14 years, you'll see that this is the beginning of seals. This is the mid portion of seals. This is now the Lord coming at the end of seals. The 140 at the end of the sixth seal, the 144,000 are sealed, ruling with a rod of iron, and the child was caught up. This is the rapture of the great multitude. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, I think verse 4. The was caught up. This is the rapture, to be where the Lord is on Mount Zion that he came down with. Then the woman flees into the wilderness. This is a different one. It's not the one from later. And she's there for 1260. So up to this point here, to the rapture, this is the first portion. This is seals. This now begins. They're going to flee. This woman in particular is going to flee into the wilderness for 3.5 years. During this 3.5 years, there is a war going on in heaven with Michael and his angels against the dragon and his angels. When we read it, it seems like, oh, it's just a couple verses. It just happens that quick. No, it doesn't. It'll be a 3.5 year battle in the heavens. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if the physical world will see it in that world, in the dimension. I don't know. But when that 3.5 year battle, which puts it at 10.5 years approximately, when that battle is over and Satan loses, he is cast out. He is now being sent down to the earth. You see, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now it's woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because he knows his time is short and he has great wrath. And so he turns to go after the woman. Remember, and now they flee. Now they go and they are taken on the wings of an eagle, and they are protected for the final 3.5 years until the entire story. Satan's dragon time, he will have 2.5 years. The Lord will return. It will be that final battle. And when that's all over, 14 years will be over, and then they will be brought back, and it will be the final Jubilee, and they will all be given their lands. So when is this time of Satan being cast down? Right here. 10.5 years into the story, mid trumpets. That's why we see the cedars. This equals 10.5 years. And that's why in Zechariah chapter 11, we see the cedars and the vintage of old being cast down. And that's why we also read that the Lord has to break his covenant that he had made with all people, and it was broken in that day. Why? Because the vintage of old, Lebanon and the pit is being opened. Remember, that's what happens at the fifth trumpet. When Satan is cast down, what happens? When Satan is cast down at the fifth trumpet, the pit is opened. Who comes out of that pit with this power and authority through Satan? The Assyrian. Who was the Assyrian? He had power through the red dragon, remember? He had power through the red dragon, the beast that was given power for 42 months. Remember, we've been saying it's the Assyrian. And what ends up happening? We know at the end of seals, when the Lord returns at the end of the 6th, in that battle that takes place, that Gog-Magog battle, we know from Daniel chapter 7 that this Antichrist beast is killed. So he was for 42 months. And in the first half of trumpets, when the Lord has now made a covenant with all people, as Zechariah 11 said, this peace deal, this peace that he made with all nations, is the time when he is not. See, he is not during the time of the rebuilding of the city and the streets and the temple, and the peace that the Lord made, that has to now be cut off at mid-trumpets, because when Satan is now cast down and Satan's on the earth and the pit is opened up, who returns? Who comes up out of that pit? The son of perdition. He was, is not at this point of the conversation, and shall be. That's Revelation chapter 17. And what does Revelation chapter 17 say about the one who was, is not, and shall be when he goes into perdition? You want to know what that is? You guys already know it. See, that's why we're in chapter 11. Chapter 11, guys. Mid trumpets. This is where it happens. Messiah's got to be cut off because Satan's here. The pit is opened. That's why it's the cedars of Lebanon. This is crazy stuff to understand. It's beautiful and it's awesome. It's wild, but it's crazy. You see, I told you guys before how the Gospel of John, the 21 chapters, are the 21 years, the 777. And so what happens in chapter 17? You're right at the point where you're getting to what? John chapter 17. What happens in John chapter 17? They start talking about what? The son of perdition. Nobody is lost, none have I lost, but the son of perdition. And what does the son of perdition then do? Chapter 18 of John. They know that Jesus was in the garden. Well, that's interesting terminology for John 18, isn't it? Because when the Lord comes on Mount Zion and the people are raptured to Mount Zion, which is paradise, at mid-trumpets, you see, mid-trumpets, 1, 2, 3, 18, halfway through, where would he still be? In the garden. And who shows up? That betrayed him. And now Jesus is taken into the hands of sinful men. What is chapter 18 of John? Oh, it's the exact same time. The exact same time the pit is opened. The son of perdition, who was and is not and shall be, who will be the son of perdition. Now Christ is taken into the hands of sinful men, and we have the 2.5-year story to his return, feet down on the Mount of Olives, which is why it says, for they knew not that he must rise again from the dead. Come on. I can't believe what we've been given, brothers and sisters. It is just so mind-blowing. Once you have those eyes to see, once you have been given that vision of end-time understanding, the truth of the Gospels in the 14 years, and all of these books open to you. I just showed you different points and places that we didn't even realize with Exodus 34 and shining of the flesh. We didn't realize with the story that we've been talking about of the pre-imagery of Luke and shining light, shining body there at the time that represents Hanukkah. Come on. And it was his transfiguration. All of these stories, we have never ever, and neither has anybody else tried or presented me with anything that has ever contradicted any single book that has been opened. Never once. Because if your eyes can see, if they have been opened to the revelation of the end of days, you will not be able to unsee it. It will all begin to open to you piece by piece by piece by piece. And it continues to build. We know we'll never understand everything. Of course not. We'll never have the whole story. He will continue to reveal it to us and continue to give us more and more. And today, we just got a whole bunch more little exciting pieces and another big picture story showing us precisely the exact same time frame we've been talking about when he would be cast down. And look at this timing. To precisely the Son of Man beginning his 40 days. Brothers and sisters, I don't know about you. I just love it. I have so much more that I could share on this with you, but you have seen these things before, and I did touch in parts and pieces of them. But I'm telling you, man, just keep digging, keep seeking these scriptures. Don't let your focus only be the day. Don't if it's the next day, if it's this count to that count. I don't know how much more I could show to say, guys, it's Hanukkah. I don't know how much more, what more I can do to show you that the Lord has revealed to us in this ministry that there is a 50-day count connected to the start of the 14 years. And I said it, I believe, in the last video as I finished this up, that because it never happened to you guys, I understand some people may doubt. They must doubt. Because if they didn't doubt, and I don't mind that they doubt, but if they didn't doubt that the 50 days, 14 years, and the 50th Jubilee, if you never doubted that that was true, then we wouldn't be looking at all of these other days, next week or something that happens where the 50 equals nothing. That it's nothing on the calendar for the Hebrew calendar, for the Lord's calendar, and there's no 50-day connection to anything. You see, I understand why I'm so passionate about it, because it happened to me. And I've never experienced something like that since or before. And nobody on earth knew about it. And the Lord gave it through our sister Jodelle, and I knew that I knew that I knew. And she said it with, even in brackets, right on target. Why right on target? Because the revelation was 14 equals 50. And what is right on target? 50, a bullseye. And what is this? What is this imagery? 50, that's the bullseye in the constellation of the ox. And it's called bullseye, which means right on target. Jeez. Guys, this is exciting. This is all so exciting. I know we're watching. I know we're ready. I know that you brothers and sisters out there watching and praying and seeking and listening and discerning, diligently waiting and watching for the Lord. We have this light within. Don't let it diminish. Keep bringing it up, because in very short time from now, it will be time to illuminate it without. I love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.